Here's one I've been meaning to get to. It will be interesting because I think it's something that maybe the manosphere has caused, the black manosphere has actually put out and maybe made more noticeable. And this is causing Mr. Soros to come out in the open. George Soros's foundation pours $220 million into racial equality push. The Open Society Foundations, the philanthropic group founded by the business magnate George Soros, announced on Monday that it was investing $220 million in efforts to achieve racial equality in America, a huge financial undertaking that will support several black-led racial justice groups for years to come. Read Black SJWs. The initiative, which comes amid national protests for racial equality and calls for police reform ignited by the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, will immediately reshape the landscape of black political and civil rights organizations and signals the extent to which race and identity have become the explicit focal point of American politics in recent years. With no sign of receding, Mr. Soros, who has at times faced smears and anti-Semitism over his role as a liberal megadonor, is also positioning his foundation near the forefront of the protest movement. I say, no shit, Sherlock. We could have told you that. Of the $220 million, the foundation will invest $150 million in 5-year grants for selected groups. That's like $30 million a year. Okay. Including progressive and emerging organizations like the Black Voters Matter Fund and the Repairers of the Breach, a group founded by the Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II of the Poor People's Campaign. The money will also support more established black civil rights organizations like the Equal Justice Initiative, which was founded by civil rights lawyer Bryan Stevenson and depicted in the 2019 movie Just Mercy. The Open Foundations will invest an additional $70 million in local grants supporting changes to policing and criminal justice. This money will also be used to pay for opportunities for civic engagement and to organize internships and political training for young people. Patrick Gaspard, the president of the Open Society Foundation, said in an interview that the group believed the investment was about harnessing the momentum toward racial justice, but also giving organizations room to think long term. Now, he said, is the moment we've been investing in for the last 25 years. Underline that. Now, he said, is the moment we've been investing in for the last 25 years. That's been telling you how long they've been planning this particular moment. And also, that's been almost as long as a little bit longer than the millennials have been coming of age. There is a call for justice in black and brown communities, an explosion of not just sympathy but solidarity across the board, Mr. Gaspard said. So it's time to double down, and we understood we can place a bet on these activists, black and white, who see this as a moment of not just incrementalism but whole-scale reform. What have I been telling you? The iron is hot, and they see it. How come we don't? The demands being made now will not be met overnight, and we know the gaze of media and elected officials will turn in other directions, he added. But we need these moments to be sustained. If we're going to say Black Lives Matter, we need to say black organizations and structures matter. Even before Monday's announcement, progressive groups, Democratic candidates, and racial justice organizations had been flooded with small dollar donations. Breaking giving records and allowing former Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr., as well as House and Senate candidates, to post eye-popping fundraising numbers. It is the convergence of an election year which Democrats are desperate to defeat President Trump with extraordinary protest movement that has pushed many to action, changing public opinion among white Americans and ideological moderates in the process. But making the grants last for 5 years, Open Society's leader said the organization is freeing groups to think beyond the current moment. Heather McGee, who's on the foundation's domestic board and has been on recent calls informing groups of their new grants, said the 5-year commitments Let leaders feel they could breathe and they can focus on the strategy and the work. The calls have been emotional, she said, as groups that have long felt marginalized by mainstream philanthropy find out their work will be sustained and supported. It frees up time and ensures that once the corporations stop putting up statements and the small dollar donations stop, they can keep fighting this fight, Mrs. McGee said. If you take the blinders off racism, if you take the blinders of racism off, of course you should be investing in Black leadership. Highlight that. Investing in Black leadership, and these organizations shouldn't be worried about money. This is not the first effort by Mr. Soros or his foundation to target racial inequality, though it's the most expansive. In 1994, Mr. Soros started Open Society's domestic work with a focus on criminal justice reform. He has aimed philanthropic efforts at historically marginalized groups abroad, and a nod to his own experience as a Jewish person who survived the Nazi occupation of Hungary. In recent years, Mr. Soros has become a favorite target of some conservatives and right-wing groups, which have sometimes used anti-Semitic tropes to try to recast his giving as an effort to seek world influence. Between local grants and the millions for Black-led organizations, however, Mr. Soros and his foundations have helped answer the question of whether the social justice groups have dominated the current moment are here to stay. Alexander Soros, who serves alongside his father as deputy chair of Open Society, said in a statement that the new investment was a response to a time for urgent and bold action. Where have you heard that before? These investments will empower proven leaders in the Black community to reimagine policing and mass incarceration and eliminate barriers to opportunity that have been long the source of inequality for too long, he said. Like he said, they're doubling down on Black leadership. And I'm not saying he's right. I'm not saying he's wrong. What I'm saying is it's a lot of money, $250 million, to small justice groups. And for small justice groups, a small investment like this, which this is, compared to the Koch brothers, this is relatively nothing. And in a time of crisis like this, the gain could be huge. So instead of him being in the background, like I didn't know he was investing in these groups since 1994, but hey, it's nice to know. And Black Lives Matters, I believe, was like a test case. And now it has paid dividends, with the COVID-19 and with the protests going on behind George Floyd. And that's why you see statues like Black Lives Matters and all these signs being painted in the street. It's not just money, it's also influence. What's better than being part of a revolution, being part of new leadership? And what's better is creating it yourself. Now, am I saying that George Soros created these foundations or funded them secretly? I don't know. I don't have the access nor the manpower to actually find this out. I'm just a regular dude, but I would actually keep these names of the foundations that he's actually financing, and I will remember that every time their names come up, because if he's pumping this kind of money and influence into these people, these names will come up again. But at least we can't focus solely on Black Lives Matter anymore. I think Black Lives Matter has not run its course, but has done its job. And so now to kind of get the focus off the BLM, you're actually spreading it out. So I would say it's not quite like an octopus spreading out its tentacles, but it's something to keep an eye on. Is George Soros the next Koch brothers? But on a Democratic side, stay tuned and we'll find out. The iron is hot, change is in motion, and it's not just here, it's worldwide, and this is a gateway into a worldwide movement. And again, just like in the 1960s, Black people are at the forefront. Past is prologue. Is George Soros taking advantage of something that has happened before? But instead of fighting it, he's investing in it. Something to think about. But anyway, just letting you guys know to be aware of this. I'm sure most people know. It's been all over the news. And if you don't know, you should know. Well, with that, I'm going to jump off here. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next.